bottom of 27b, last line on the page. At the Gemara. Gemara says that just like the waters check her, they also check him. Who exactly is him? So Gemara says, who is he? Who exactly is the water checking? Ilim labal, that it's checking her husband. In other words, if her husband also was adulterous, then he would also die. The Gemara says, Baal my ovid. What exactly did he do? His actions are not tied to her actions. So the Gemara says, maybe you'll say the isbe oven bati that if he has his own problems, so he'll die as well. Is that the case, that if he has sinned, the waters will check him? The man will be clean and the woman will carry her sins, in other words, and die. And the Gemara explains, if the man is not clean of sin, for example, the man had a relationship with her after the stira, after the seclusion, so then the waters will not check his wife. Now, what's very clear is they won't check his wife, but they won't check him either. In other words, it's obviously he broke the rule, and therefore the water won't check his wife, but it's not like it will kill his wife and kill him. So clearly, it's not the case that it kills the husband. That's not the man that the water is checking. The elo, rather leboil. The water will kill the adulterer. So the Gemara says, listening to the Tani Seifa, Kishem Shasur Labal Kach Asur Laboil. If that's the case, then one second. Why does it call him Oisai? In other words, him as a man, it should call him a boil, the adulterer. So and you see in the end of the Mishnah, where we talk about the prohibition for the husband and the prohibition for the adulterer, we call him a boil, an adulterer. So the Gemara says, we're talking about the adulterer. In the beginning of the Mishnah, because we're talking about the waters checking her, so we use the contrapositive of that, which is Oisai, him. However, in the Seifa, Ayat Tana Baal, Tana Baal, because we talk about the husband as a Baal, as a husband, so then we talk about the adulterer as a Baal, as an adulterer. Okay. The Gemara says, how do we know that the water is checker? Shenemar, because the pasuk says ubo ubo. Okay, we'll go through this at length. One second. Okay. Now, let's move to the second category. We learned that she's prohibited to the husband and she's prohibited to the boil, to the adulterer. According to Rabbi Kiva, the word nitma'a, she is tamei, meaning she has laid carnally, is used 3 times in when the Torah speaks about the woman. One of the times is it says vinitma, and she has become tamei. Rabbi Kiva says that the vav of vinitma is extra. So effectively, it's as if it says the word nitma 4 times. There are 4 separate things that are learned from the word nitma. Now, what does nitma mean? She became tamei. In other words, she lied carnally. Now, obviously, that's the whole discussion, right? 1 second. So, for example, the first time it says it, I'm sorry, this is actually the last time it says it. First time it says it is, overall of ruach kena v'kinei, he warns his wife, okay? V'hinit ma, and she is tamei, or he warns his wife and she isn't tamei. Both of those are extra. Obviously, the question here is whether or not she's tamei. The fact that Torah says she's tamei means that there's an implication of tumah, meaning that the fact that she laid carnally has an impact on some other halacha where she's considered tamei. In other words, even if the Torah doesn't give you a direct prohibition to the husband, we say she's tamei. That means that it's as if she was adulterous with a man, and therefore she's prohibited to her husband. She has a status of tamei. Now, similarly, the waters go into her. Ubo. So the Gemara wants to know, Ibayelu. Bo ubo kamar, I ubo. Okay, so if you look at the psukim, if you have on the side of the page in fancy Gemaras, it's second and the third, Beis and Gimel. The Kohen warns the woman and says that obviously that you have not slept with anybody, and if you did, the water is going to check you. Ubo, and they will come hamayim arim, and they'll blow up. Just to have my family, I have a bunch of people that learn Daf Yomi. So somebody sent out a picture today of a license plate that said it's Sotah. So the other guy texted back. He says, "You weren't afraid it was going to blow up." Anyway, okay, so that's the first abo. The second abo is that the woman, in other words, the process would actually take place. The woman would drink the water, and ubo hamayim hamarim ha'ela, the cursed waters would enter her. Okay, so the Gemara wants to know, is the fact that the word ubo is repeated twice, that tells me that not only will it enter her, but it will also enter the adulterer? Or is it from the fact that the word ubo is spelled with a vav, which indicates to me that there's another person involved as well? Bo ubo kamar or ubo. Is the fact the word is repeated twice, or is the fact that a vav is added to the word bo in one of the instances? The Gemara says, Toshma, let's examine this. Kashem asur lebal, kach asur lebayil. Shenemar nitma v'nitma. It says nitma v'nitma. Okay, evidently it seems to be a vav. So the vav seems to be the main component here. So the Gemara says no. Vadayin tibai. Well, that I would also ask. Nitma kamar, I nitma v'nitma kamar, I nitma kamar. Is it the fact the word is repeated, or is it the fact that there's a vav? The Gemara says Tashma. Let's continue. Minitani Seifa. Rabbi Kiva says it says nitma v'nitma. And what happens? Rebbe Aimer shnei pa'am hamurim b'parsha v'nitma v'nitma echad lebal v'echad lebayil. Rebbe clearly states it's because the fact the word is repeated. Mechalal the Rabbi Kiva vavi kadarsh. The word, according to Rabbi Kiva, the vav, the letter vav is what he's focusing on. Okay, therefore, Helkach Rabbi Kiva shita kroi ksivi. 1 second. Okay, there are 6 times. The first time is when the Kohen speaks of it in the curse. The Kohen informs her as part of the curse that she accepts that the water will kill her. The second time is where God tells the Kohen, go give the woman water, and the water will blow her up. And the third time is that when she actually does it. Yeah, and then she actually drinks it, and if it happens that she was actually tummy, then she blows, then she dies. Okay, so it says, so now in every instance it says ubo, so that's equivalent to having you written it 6 times. Chalat savodido, chalat savodidei. 1 second, hold on. Okay, now the 3 of them, the first one is part of the curse, which is called, 1 second. The first one informs the woman that she will die from the water. That's part of the curse. The second one is a commandment to actually drink the water, and that's where God commands the Kohen to give the woman to drink. And the second one is to actually. The third one is to actually is the actual doing of it when the woman drinks. and in the last one, when she actually does it, God basically promises that if she's guilty, she'll be killed, and if she's not guilty, she will live. Okay. Now, in each one of these instances, each one is a commandment for her and for him, for the adulterer. One for the fact that we will perform this with her, and that it will have an impact on him. 1 second. And one to let her know, and one to let him know. Let's borrow this for a second. I don't think we actually drink. It's pretty clear. 1 second. Okay. So each pasuk basically is telling us the consequences for her and then for him as well. He would obviously not drink the water, but her drinking the water would have an impact on him, the adulterer. Okay, according to Rebbe, tilsa kroy ksivi. It's the word of woe is repeated 3 times. One to command it, one to do it, and one to know about it, to be informed about it. Okay. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, according to Rebbe, how does Rebbe know of the concept that the waters will kill the adulterer as well? So the Gemara says, we learn it from this price. So the word litzvais beten v'lan p'liyarach, to litzvais would mean to for a stomach to blow up and for a thigh to fall. This is a reference to the stomach and the thigh of the adulterer. Maybe it means the woman who sinned. When the Torah already speaks of her blowing up, then it already mentions her stomach and her thigh. So what else? When the Kohen mentions litzvos betem v'lam pal yarach, why exactly? What is that a reference to? The Gemara says Yerecha shel Baal bitna v'Yerecha shel Baal. It's the stomach and the thigh of the adulterer that he gets killed as well. Okay, the Gemara says v'idach according to Rabbi Kiva. So why is betem v'Yerech repeated? Ahu de moidelu kayin de betem b'Reisha. B'hadar Yerech. 1 second. Okay. In other words, when the Kohen gives the curse, so he begins the curse by threatening her that her thigh will fall and her stomach will blow up. Now it's actually the opposite that happens. The stomach blows first before the thigh falls. And why is it so important? Because we learned a couple of times so far that the manner in which she dies is critically important. Only a sotah will die, her stomach blowing up first and then her thigh distending. If she gets into an accident 10 minutes later, she was not a sotah. A sotah dies from a very specific death. You think about it in a certain sense. A sotah is going to die quickly, and you can't even shoot a sotah. If she's actually guilty of the crime, you wouldn't be able to shoot her because God promises the only way she'll die is this way. Now, the Kohen does mention in the curse the opposite happening, so therefore he concludes his curse by telling her it's going to happen in a specific order: first the stomach, then the thigh. That they will kill in a very specific way, and she shouldn't make a mistake and think that if her thigh falls first, she's not a sotah. The idach, according to Rebbe, imken lechtiv kra bitna v'Yerecha. So it could repeat the stomach and the thigh, but clearly referencing her in a female term, bitna v'Yerecha, her stomach and her thigh. My beten v'Yerech, when you put it in a sort of neutral term, a stomach and a thigh. Shmami no laboil. It's also referencing the husband. Maybe it's only talking about the husband. If it's only talking about the husband, it should reference his thigh. Clearly belong to the husband. My bet and v'yarech, when you talk about it in a neutral way, which could mean either male or female. We see from here both that it will kill the husband and the woman. Okay. Together? Okay, this Gemara is a little complicated. Now, what?
You, Eric.
Yeah. Okay, we're learning about the prohibition for the husband and the prohibition for the adulterer, and we'll see the word v'nitma is repeated 3 times, and the significance of the word nitma means that the fact that we consider a sotah until she drinks the waters and lives, we consider her to be a certain adulterer, and we consider it to be tamei. That has implications on other halachas as well. Okay, and we have a debate here between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi. According to Rabbi Kiva, we look at the vav of vinitma, and according to Rabbi, we do not. Tana Rabbanan, we learn shalosh pa'amim ha'amurim b'parsha, 3 times that it says in the parsha im nitma, vinitma. Hold on a second. Okay. Yeah, the first part of it is when we talk about kinoi, when we talk about the warning. We talk about the warning, we say vihinat ma, and in other words, he warns his wife, and she is tamei or she isn't tamei. In other words, he suspects her of adultery, so he gives her a warning. The second time it says is when she drinks the water. V'haisa im nitma, if she is tamei and she's been adulterous, which obviously means the tamei part is superfluous, because it could have said the fact that she's adulterous. Why is the word tamei repeated? So the word tamei is extra again. Then she'll die. And finally, the Torah concludes, this is the rule of a woman who's adulterous. Vinitma, and she became tamei. Now, obviously, again, the word nitma is extra a 3rd time. Lama, why are these all necessary? Echad labal, v'echad l'boil, v'echad l'truma. Before the waters investigate her, she's prohibited to her husband, she's prohibited to the adulterer, and she's prohibited to eat truma. In other words, if she is married to a Kohen, maybe even she herself is a Kohen, she cannot eat truma. The reason is that if she's married to a Kohen, it's because she's prohibited to him. That's why she can't eat truma. If she herself is also a Kohen, she still can't eat truma, because a Kohenet, female Kohen that has had a forbidden relationship, which obviously adultery is one of those, is prohibited to eat truma. Okay. Divrei Rabbi Kiva, this is the opinion of Rabbi Kiva. Okay, now we'll go off tangent here. Rabbi Kiva points out to forbidden to the husband, forbidden to the adulterer, and forbidden for truma. Rabbi Shmuel's response here has nothing to do with what Rabbi Kiva said. The Gemara will address that, and we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. Rabbi Shmuel presumed that Rabbi Kiva also said she's prohibited to stay married to a Kohen. If her husband is a Kohen, so she's considered to be an adulterer, and therefore cannot stay married to him because she has a status of a zona. Now, this part obviously is not mentioned in the Bryce. It's not mentioned in this passage. Okay, so Amar Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel has the following question. But Rabbi Shmuel points it as follows. There's no need for, again, Rabbi Kiva says 3 things: the husband, the adulterer, and truma. And we don't know this yet. I'm telling you, we'll see in the Gemara in a moment. Also, kahuna. That's the 4th thing that Rabbi Kiva did not mention. Rabbi Shmuel takes issue with this fourth thing that Rabbi Kiva did not mention. Rabbi Shmuel, Kal v'chaymer, it's obvious. Uma grusha shemuteres latruma asura lekahuna. Just like a woman who's divorced is permitted to eat truma, meaning if a kohenet, a female kohen, is allowed to eat truma, she gets married to a non-kohen, she's not allowed to eat truma. Then she gets divorced without children. She returns to her father's house, and she is allowed to eat truma. So someone who's allowed to eat truma, however, still now she's not allowed to marry a kohen. A divorcee is prohibited to a kohen. Asur lekahuna. Zusha asura b'truma. Therefore, if you have a woman who's prohibited to eat truma because of suspected adultery, ein adin sh'asur lekahuna. It would seem obvious that kahuna, which is the kahuna, which is less of an inclusive category. I'm sorry, which is more of an inclusive category, is also prohibited. Right? In other words, so if you have the truma, which is a smaller category, and still an adulteress is excluded from that category, truma, which is a wider category, for sure an adulteress is included in that category as well, and therefore prohibited to marry a kohen. So therefore, why does the Torah say v'hinitma v'hiloinitma? Okay, so now, according to Rabbi Shmuel, the word nitma is not necessary. We know that she's prohibited to a kohen because it's obvious. Okay, if that's the case, so what is one of these nitma? The word is extra. The question is as follows: he chooses the nitma of the warning. So the husband suspects his wife of adultery, and he warns her because she might be nitma. V'kines ishlei v'hi nitma. He's warning his wife, and she is guilty. Or oy overall kines ishlei v'hi lo nitma. Or he's warning his wife, and she's not guilty. So hold on a second. Im nitma, if she's guilty, lama shoysa. Why is she drinking? Because if she's guilty, she doesn't drink. She's prohibited, and she leaves the marriage. The drinking is only in a scenario of suffix, of doubt. Im lo nitma, if she's not guilty, lama mashke. Why is he giving her to drink? She's innocent. Obviously, what's the scenario? Magid l'cha kosav, the Torah is teaching here shahasafik asura, that we treat this woman who may or may not have become tamei as if she became tamei. Okay, so what does this mean? We have a woman. We don't know whether or not she committed a forbidden action, and we treat her as if she's forbidden.
Guilty until proven innocent.
No, well, in this case, she's sort of guilty, really.
Yeah.
Right, because in other words, there's serious grounds here to suspect the violation has occurred. It's kine and stira. Okay, and therefore mikana. Okay. Mikana to don l'sharet. So in general, now we go really off tangent. If anyone remembers, we spoke about this a few times in terms of tuma and tahara. Obviously, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, maybe a little bit afterwards, people ate their food in this sort of state of being. It is an absolute requirement for truma and kachim. You must be tahar. If you're not tahar, you cannot consume it. There's severe penalties for doing it. Obviously, once the temple was destroyed, and at some point became difficult. There's no ashes of the red heifers. There's no way to make people pure again. At some point, we stopped eating truma. Now we throw it all in the garbage because we cannot consume it. I told you there's one legitimate way that can still consume truma. Did I tell you that one? I think I did. A kohen is not allowed to eat truma unless he's tahar. However, a kohen's animal is allowed to eat truma. So if you go to the Gan HaChayot Tanachi in Jerusalem, all the animals are owned by Kohanim, and they feed them truma. That's sort of a way of how they can absolve, instead of throwing it all in the garbage, that's what they do with it. Okay. Okay. 4 lines on the bottom of the page. From here we can I'm saying, this is what I was talking about. Okay. The general rule is that with regard to Tumah, let's say there's a doubt whether something is or isn't tummy. So it depends. If the doubt occurred in a public place, so we say it's tahor. If the doubt occurred in a private place, we say it's tummy. And we'll soon see there's another condition as well. It has to be that a human being was involved in the doubt. Let's say, for example, you have a piece of let's say you have a little bug, a spider who's hanging from a pendulum that's swinging back and forth, and the wind is blowing, and we don't know if the pendulum has touched a piece of truma that's sitting next to it. This is ein b'das l'shal, because no one was observing the event occurring, and therefore, even in a private domain, that would still remain tahor. There has to be a human being involved in the interaction. Obviously, like a sotah, a woman doesn't by accident become a sotah, right? If she uses sotah, there's obviously two people that are involved. Both of them know about it. Okay.
He doesn't have to be one, does he?
No, not at all. Okay, mikanat don l'sheretz. From here, we talk about tumah with regard to sheretz. Sheretz is a bug. When you look at Sotah, the Torah says that there is a difference between shogig and mezid, whether she was guilty or she was innocent. How could she be innocent if she was raped? Or if she was forced, also another instance of rape. Or a karotzen with intention. Obviously, she willingly violated her marriage. In either of these instances, despite the fact that there's a difference between intention and lack thereof by Sotah, meaning if she willed the relationship, she's guilty of being a Sotah. If she was raped, she's obviously innocent, and she's not guilty of being a Sotah. She doesn't go through the Sotah process. Torah specifically excludes rape. And yet we still say that whether we have doubts as to whether she lied carnally with the adulterer, we say safek kavadai. The doubt is like a certainty. Sheretz, a bug, she'asaba shogeg kamezid, where there's no difference between whether the bug voluntarily touched the piece of the apple of truma or not. In either instance, the truma is going to be tamei. If somebody forced the spider, or whatever, the mouse onto the apple, it makes no difference whether that happened or whether the mouse crawled onto the apple by itself or whether the apple fell on top of the mouse. So ein adin, it certainly should be the case, sheyasa by safek kivadai, that when we have a doubt as to whether or not a mouse touches an apple of truma or an apple of chulin for that matter, we treat that safek as vadai and we say it's certainly tamei. Okay. However, when we makam shabasa, let's examine the source of the implication. In other words, so you're telling me now that we treat a doubt of tumah like a certainty. And how do we know that? From Sotah. Hold on, let's look at Sotah. Umas Sotah Rishus HaYachid. When does the doubt of Sotah occur? In a private domain, right? It's a secluded location. That is the definition of stira. Stira is hidden. It's a hidden event. They've been secluded together, and there's obviously suspicion of a carnal act. So therefore, the doubt of a sheretz of tumah that we say is treated as if it's certainty of tumah is only in a private domain, not in the public space. Furthermore, just like by Sotah, there are two people that know whether or not the act was committed. It's clearly the case. So by a bug also, it's a scenario where somebody is available to be asked. Like we said, there has to be someone observing the event, someone who could know. If nobody could know, that's not considered a suffix. So if we don't know if nobody was present, or two items appear next to each other, we don't know if they touched, that is not considered that type of doubt. Okay. And therefore we learned something that there's a person to ask, Rishus Yachin, a private domain, Sfeik or Tomei. That type of suffix is Tomei. Rishus Rabim, however, if it's in the public domain, Sfeik or Tar, the suffix is Tar, V'She'ein B'das Ishol. However, if this doubt is not possible, there is no possibility of verifying what happened. In other words, there was no individual observer or human being that was involved directly in the interaction. He was holding the mouse and holding the apple. Whether it happened in the public or the private domain, he is tahar. The apple is tahar. Okay. So Rabbi Shmuel tells me that one of these nitmos teaches me self-kivadai. That the doubt of Sotah is treated like a certainty, and from there we learn that all types of doubts are treated like certainty, as long as they fit into the similar rubric of Sotah, which is a human being that's present, that witnessed or actuated the action. So that's both, really. And second of all, it happened in private. Okay. Now, what time is it? Okay. I'm just going to pause here and do the Gemara in a different direction. Just take a pause over here for a moment. You can skip down to Chav Tes and Aleph. But half the way down the page. Amar of Gidl is the last word. Gidl is the last word on the line. First word on the line is Amar Rav, about a little less than halfway down the page. This just will finish the Gemara and we'll finish the dialogue between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva tomorrow. So Amar of Gidl, Amar Rav. Davar sheyesh b'das l'shol ve'ein b'das l'shol mehai kronafka. The question as to whether a human being observed the interaction is not learned from Sotah. It's learned from a different pasuk. We learn v'habasa asher yiga b'chol tomei lo yochel. If meat touches anything, any type of tomei, then you can't eat it. What does that mean? What does that tell you? Vaday tomei. If you know that it became tomei, hu de lo yochel, that's where you can't eat it. Has suffix tomei, but if you don't know whether it touched something tomei or not, the suffix Torah, or maybe it was Torah, yochel, then you could eat it. Ema Sefer. Let's look at another pasuk. The end of that pasuk is v'habasar kol tohar yochel basar. We talk about a human being eating it. We say the human being has to be tahar. Hold on a second. Vaday tahar hu yochel basar. If he knows he's tahar, he's allowed to eat the meat. If the human being knows he's tahar. Hasafik. Let's say he's not sure whether or not he became tamei. So then hasafik tamei v'safik tahar. We have a doubt. He has a personal doubt whether he's tamei or tahar. Lo yochel, he cannot consume the meat. Well, hold on a second. What's going on here? Do we say a suffix is tamei or tahar? You're telling me that a suffix in the meat is tahar. A suffix in the person is tamei. The meat, we have to know it became tamei. The man, we have to know he became tahar. Well, what about the middle? It's a suffix. It seems to be a contradiction. If you have to know it became tamei, that means that a suffix is tahar. If you have to know that he's tahar, that means that a suffix is actually tamei. So which is it? El alav shmami, no, the difference must be as follows. Kan sheyesh b'das l'shol, kan she'ein b'das l'shol. When a human being is involved in the interaction, he could verify himself. So therefore, a suffix in the human being, we say that a suffix we treat like tamei. Whereas a suffix in the piece of meat where there's no human being involved, that we say is tahar. So hold on. Why do we need to learn this from Sotah? We already know it from the verse discussing a piece of meat becoming tamei and the human being eating it having to be tahar. So we have two verses telling me an identical thing. So the Gemara resolves. Okay. We need both statements. The imid Rav, if I would only know from this statement of Rav, in other words, the fact that there's a difference between the human being who eats, who needs to be certainly tahar, and the meat that's consumed that needs to be certain, that has to be not tamei, not certainly tamei.
Rabbi, page position again, please.
We're on 29. We skipped a little bit. So we're on 29a, about a quarter left to the page. First word on the line is lemigmar misota.
Rabbi, you mean we cheated and we skipped ahead?
Yeah, we'll go back tomorrow. But I just wanted to finish this section, and then tomorrow.
I'm telling Mom, but go ahead.
Okay. Okay. The imid Rav. If we learn from Rav, in other words, the difference between the piece of meat and the man who eats it, I would think it makes no difference whether it happened publicly or privately, because there is no indication in that verse. That's why, therefore, Therefore, Sotah tells me any doubt that you want to treat as a certainty, it has to be a private doubt. Even if the person there's a suffix tumah, maybe the person became tummy, but it happened in a public area. In other words, maybe there was a dead body in the middle of the road. We don't know if he walked over it or not. We treat that as tahar because it happened publicly. It's only privately where we treat it as tummy. But if I would have just known from Sotah, in the scenario of Sotah, I would have to know. In the scenario of Sotah, the adulterer knows, and the woman who slept with him potentially knows. However, we're only there's let's say only the person who touches the item knows. In other words, where a man has a mouse and touches a apple with it, maybe that type of suffix, or we don't know whether the apple touched the mouse. Maybe that type of suffix would be tahar, because you don't have the toucher and the touched don't know. Only one of them knows. In other words, maybe the instance. In other words, Sotah would teach me actually if two people touched each other, or there's a doubt whether two people touch each other, that type of touching would be tamei and reshus hayachid. Just like the scenario of Sotah with two people involved, but where you have a person and an inanimate object like an apple. So in that scenario, we would say that it could be the apple would remain tahar, even though there's a doubt. And that's where Rav Gidlam Rav teaches us that no, even if there's an observer, that's sufficient to create tumah. So if there was somebody who witnessed or did the action, somebody who knows about it and happened privately, and there's a doubt, it's tummy. If there's no one to observe, it's not tummy. Okay, now tomorrow we'll finish up the Gemara that we saw, which is exactly what the source is to learn that the adulterer and the husband are both prohibited to the woman unless she verifies by drinking the water that she is tahar.
Oh.
Okay, have a great day. And tomorrow it is not any easier. If one of these